Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. and today I'm reviewing SolForge Fusion from Richard Garfield and Justin Gary. SolForge Fusion is a game from Stoneblade Entertainment, which is designed by Richard Garfield and Justin Gary, but from Stoneblade Entertainment, and it's a game of... It's a two-player game of a bunch of decks which you're going to mix together, of which each deck is guaranteed to be unique based on the algorithm and code, similar to a concept called Keyforge that was also done by, well, Richard Garfield, but then was temporarily not available and is kind of now back available. We're getting sidetracked and distracted. SolForge Fusion. SolForge has you combining customized decks into be your own unique deck of, well, two different factions or whatnot. You might actually be able to combine the same factions. I just don't think that's quite as much fun, but you go ahead and combine them, and that's the whole fusion part. You're going to shuffle them together, like I have already, grabbing these decks, taking two colors, two factions, shuffling them up, putting them down as your deck, having the other player do so on their end, and then from there, drawing your 5 cards, and going through the process of trying to take your opponent's life total down to 0 before they do so for yours. In that game, in that process, what you're going to do is you're going to draw your hand of cards, and you're going to be playing cards to these lanes of combat. You're going to have these lanes of combat where you're going to start prepping your cards in the back lane, moving them up forward. In the aggressive lane, you'll be taking the cards, trying to get towards your opponent to be able to take them down as you go through the process of prepping your cards to take them out as you try to put creatures down to the battlefield, creatures that will either be attacking your opponent's creatures, you'll be taking turns back and forth playing cards, your opponent having the chance to react to you to defend against what you're about to do to them, or perhaps to take you out on the flip side, meanwhile casting spells along the way, and then the important part, the part that makes this game unique and fun and interesting, I mean there's other things that make this game unique and fun and interesting, but the best part of this game for me is the part in which you upgrade your cards. You see, every single time you play a card, you go ahead and you grab a card and you're like, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to play Unstable Mystic over here. I'm going to play Unstable Mystic into this row so that I can sit there and attack you. Great. I'm going to sit there, go through this deck, and find my level 2 Unstable Mystic, which is going to be a red card. And so I'm going to go ahead and grab that. I'm going to grab the Unstable Mystic and put it into my discard pile. Effectively, taking a level 2 version of a card I've already played, putting it to my discard pile so that after 3 rounds, when I shuffle my deck, I will now have the level 2 Unstable Mystic at play. But I'm not done yet. I'm actually going to combine that Unstable Mystic with this Scythian Augmentation spell, which I'm going to go ahead, this is just a spell, it's a one-time spell, it will not go into the battlefield. Give your creatures 4 defense this turn, and if you have a mage in play, deal 2 damage to all enemy creatures. This would be a great spell to play because this is a mage, 2 decks working off another, except for the fact that my opponent has no cards actually out. I'm just teaching the game, don't worry too much about the efficiency. But we'll go ahead and get rid of this into the banish pile, and again, grab a level 2 Scythian Augmentation in order to throw that into play. And this level 2 Scythian Augmentation, the way this one works is instead of giving it 4 defense, it gives it 6 defense, and instead of dealing 2 damage, it deals 3 damage. It's just a better, upgraded, more enhanced version of the previous level spell. And if you want to see the level 3 version, because level 3 versions of everything are always the best, the level 3 version of Scythian Augmentation is going to be give your creatures 10 defense and deal 5 damage to all enemy creatures. That's absolutely huge over here. The level 3 creatures over here are absolutely insane. The creatures, the spells, all of that. And so you're going through this process. Every single turn, you're going to have your end of cards. You're going to upgrade 2 cards as you play them. The rest get discarded. You draw 5 new cards. Your opponent goes back and forth, reacting, playing cards into their lane. And then again, go through that process. You're going to go through 3 cycles of that before you go ahead and shuffle everything together and repeat the process. At this point, you're going to be starting to level up more level 1s into level 2s, but also some of your level 2s into level 3s as well. And the level 3s are absolutely the best part of the game. Along the way, there's a few other things going on. First of all, you're going to have your leader over here. Every player is going to have a leader, which is one of the 2 leaders of the faction you've chosen. So, for example, in this case, I've chosen Ironbeard. But whenever you mix together the 2 factions, you choose one of those leaders. And that leader is going to have an ability, depending on if you're in stage 2, 3, or 4. As far as an ability, you can go ahead and flip the counter on it to show its use. And this one sets a creature's defense, sets a creature's attack to 0, which is great. Or shields up. You and your creatures get 6 defense this turn. Or knockback. Move up to 2 creatures to the back row of the lanes. You may give them negative 10 attack. And so these leaders will give you game-breaking abilities that are one-time use generally, that will mess with your opponent as far as what their tactical plans are, as they try to play cards to the rows, as they try to slowly assault your defense, as they slowly try to take down your creatures, all of that trying to go back and forth in a game of SolForge Fusion. As far as the actual combat mechanic, generally what you're going to be doing is you're going to be comparing creatures' strength against one another. So for example, if we have a 5-5 against a 1-3, the 1-3 will deal 1 damage to the 5-5. The 5-5 will take out the 3 over here because 5 is greater than 3. The 5 attack will beat the 3 defense. But additionally, this creature has Breakthrough, which means it'll deal 2 damage to my life total. So you want to be mindful of that. Breakthrough is any excess damage goes straight to your opponent's life total. Meanwhile, I'll deal 1 damage to that creature. And you'll use these little modifiers to go ahead and mark any changes to the creature's stats as you go through it. And then again, as you play other cards, as you do other things, you'll find other effects that mess with your opponent's values or creatures or give them modifiers or adjust their stats in various different ways. You're going to go back and forth, one player being the attack, one player being the defense, placing your cards, trying to react, trying to slowly grow the battlefield, adding more and more cards to the battlefield as you try to be mindful of what strategy is going to work the best for your cards, for your deck, and the way you've been upgrading and modifying your deck. Again, keeping in mind, which is a combination of 2 unique decks, each deck already being completely unique in the powers, the abilities, the way they augment the combination of any one deck of cards, and then the fact that you are going to be modifying that by mixing it together with another, and so you're always dealing with a completely customized, never seen before deck that you've ever, well, existed in the history of SolForge Fusion. That's basically the concept. Go through a deck of 20 cards, level up the cards one at a time, a deck of, well, unique cards, 2 decks of unique cards being shuffled together and combined, leveling up the cards as you play, taking down your opponent's life total to 0, and from that, let's go ahead and dive into the review. Starting off with ease of play, game is fairly easy to dive into. Rules are, for the most part, fairly easy to follow, especially if you've played any 2-player deck system before. If you've played any of these 2-player aggressive systems where you have a deck of cards, you're playing them, you have lanes, you have creatures, if you've played Magic the Gathering, if you've played Hearthstone, if you've played Radlands, if you've played any of these games where you're going back and forth with creatures, attacks, and defenses, and taking people down, dealing with keywords, they have a nice little handy little promo thingy that covers the keywords. Very simple, very accessible. If you've played a game like Magic the Gathering, most of them will be familiar. Breakthrough is Trample, things like that. But overall, you're just messing with your opponent's health totals and trying to do so with the combination of your cards and your decks. And the thing that makes this game different and interesting is the leveling up concept as you go through play. As you slowly gather cards and play them, and as you add new cards to your deck based on upgrading those cards, everything you play gets more experience and becomes more powerful, a creature or a spell. But overall, ease of play is very, very accessible in this game. As far as what I like, don't like, and can see others not liking, starting off with that thing I'm already touching upon is the main highlight of SolForge, which is the upgrading of your cards. The fact that as you play the game, the cards you use get stronger. The fact that as you play the game, there's a sense of escalation to it. The fact that as you enter round 4, you're both playing your powerful level 3 cards, and they are very powerful. Make no mistake, when you play this game, one of the fun things about playing through SolForge Fusion is even the exact same 2 decks, combined in the exact same ways, will still result in a completely different end game the next time you play, because of the fact that the level 3 cards are so game-breakingly powerful that having them come into play, having them show up, is just tremendous, because you will not be able to upgrade all your level 3 cards, and so you're going to play one game and have these 3 or 4 upgraded to level 3, and you're going to play a different game and have those 3 or 4 upgraded to level 3, and each one will give you a drastically different experience, especially when you take into account who you're pairing off against and their cards, their powers and abilities, their leader abilities, and the combination all together. The upgrading system in SolForge is what makes this game compelling. It gives the game a nice power creep in the game, so by the time you enter the 4th round of play, you're just smashing each other strongly in the face, and it's delightful to do so. And everything seems to merge nicely between the 2 different sets. Between the different factions at play, there's always some degree of synergy, and then there'll be stronger or weaker synergies depending on your unique decks and how they're combined, and what you do and what you upgrade. But overall, things seem to play nicely off one another. Things seem to play nicely, giving you that power ability, giving you that sense of cohesion, no matter what you end up shuffling together. And then the triggering between the front row and the back row of the sets over here. The fact they have this nice tempo back and forth of the players playing to the front row, the aggressive row, versus playing to the back row where they're not yet able to fight properly, and the combination of spells and abilities and creatures and your own life total. They're standard things that have been done before in 2-player dueling systems, and they're done well in SolForge Fusion, and they combine nicely with the parts of SolForge Fusion that make it unique. And then, of course, is the aspect that every single set you buy is variable. Every single set you buy is completely unique in terms of the combinations of cards, the stats on those cards, and the way everything's paired up because of the algorithmically generated decks they have. Every time you buy a new set of SolForge Fusion, you're buying a completely never before seen combination of cards. And granted, that doesn't mean you need 500 sets, but if you buy yourself 2-3 boxes of this, each of the boxes will come with 4 decks. Each 2 decks are mixed together, so a single box will give you a single 2-player experience. But if you have 3, 4, 12 boxes of this, 12 might seem like a lot, but if you have maybe, I don't know, 6 boxes of SolForge Fusion, the variability you'll have from the different decks and systems and the way you can combine any 2 of them is going to be a lot. They're going to give you a lot of combinations as far as how you can dive into this experience and see it play out differently every single time. As far as what I don't like in this game, the biggest thing I have is the component quality is, and I'm not going to mince words here, hot garbage. The component quality is absolutely hot garbage. From the fairly thin and trashable box they have over here, this does not feel like a very strong box as far as, it just feels like a very cheap box. And then from there to the playmats, these playmats, which are meant, they're almost necessary to play on. You could play without them, you could have the front row and the back row, you don't need them, but they certainly are helpful to have, and these are they're not fun. Like, I plan on upgrading to actual proper mats, and I'm coming at this from somebody who doesn't typically like mats, but this game does require good mats or no mats at all. What they have here is incredibly irritating. And then the cheap counters they have, from the very little, tiny little counter you have over here that you put on your character to mark their stats, from the modifiers they have here, everything as far as the actual components of the game just feels overall cheap. It feels like they had a great game, and they buried it amongst a not very appealing system of components around that great game. Secondly, I'd say, as far as gameplay mechanics, I'd say that the lack of upgrading some of the cards can be annoying later. You can't upgrade all the cards when you play. You're only going to play so many cards, and therefore you're only going to upgrade so many cards. But then as you enter endgame, as you're trying to counter your opponent's level 3 with a level 1 card in your hand because you didn't draw well into your level 3s, and so all you have is a few level 1s, maybe one level 2, and you're trying to counter what they have. Don't get me wrong, a level 1 can still be impactful even in the third round of combat, but at the end of the day, it's not going to pair up against level 3, and so sometimes it can be frustrating, the fact that you will not upgrade everything in the deck. You'll always have a few things that you didn't get to, a few things you didn't upgrade, and so that's a factor you want to take into account as you go through this, which overall the power creep is delightful, but the downside is when the power creep is facing off against things that don't quite match it, it can be a little anticlimactic. As far as I can see others not liking, first of all, and this is inherent by the very nature of the algorithmically generated combined sets of decks that you then shuffle together, the question of fairness and balance in this game, I can't address at all. I can tell you that every time I've played it, I've enjoyed it, and I can tell you that I've never stomped somebody so bad that I thought it was unfair, or they've never stomped me so bad that they thought it was unfair, or I thought it was unfair, or whatever you want to call it. But I will say that the fact that I've played this game and not felt it's unfair does not mean that you won't play this game and not feel it's unfair. The very nature of the algorithmically generated combined sets of cards means it's entirely possible you play a game, you stomp the person, and they're like, congratulations, your cards were better. This wasn't a game which I had a chance, this was a game which you were going to stomp me no matter what. And that can feel unfair if that happens, so you need to take that into account. The nature of these systems means that they're not balanced the same way. I'm not saying they're not balanced, but they're not balanced the same way a closed system is, and you'll want to take that into account as you play the game. You have to be okay with that. This is almost a system of exploration and discovery and enjoying that process, but yes, one person's cards might be stronger than the other person's. And secondly is leveling up and cleaning up might feel like work. Now I am somebody who does mind that things, and I tend to be mindful of it, but as you're going through the game, as you're sitting there with your hand of cards, as you have your hand over here, and as you go ahead and sit there and say, okay, great, I'm going to play this down here, and then you have to go ahead and find the Venerable Stonefist, and go ahead and grab that, and add the Venerable Stonefist into your deck over here. Let's go, boom, got it. And then, of course, at the end of the game, you're going to have to go through the cleanup of that as well. So yes, this game does have a degree of maintenance both in-game and at the end of the game as you clean everything up. You have to be okay with that. It hasn't bothered me enough here, but it certainly is present, and take that into account. That's the downside of the fusion system, not the fusion system. That's the downside of the upgrading system they have in play, and seem to be okay with that. As far as final thoughts on SolForge Fusion, I really like this game. A lot more than I was expected to, considering that this isn't typically my genre. Generally, when you have two-player head-to-head games, I find that I don't love them as a system because I find that they generally reward the person who knows the sets better. When you have two-player head-to-head card-driven games, whoever knows the cards better tends to do better, which is why I tend not to overly explore into those systems. There are exceptions that have certainly made it for me, and SolForge is one of them, almost partially because of that fairness balance issue. Because of the fact that I don't care about the fairness, I don't care about the balance, I don't care about the fact that you might have a better deck or a worse deck. I'm just going to combine two random sets of cards, and we're going to have fun going through it, leveling up our cards, and trying to stomp the other person, trying to take them down. I like what this game does primarily because of the power creep. The whole algorithmically generated thing, that's nice. I don't mind it. I don't care about it either. It's a nice little gimmick. I just don't care. If this was a closed system with, I don't know, 20 different decks, I would just purchase all 20 different decks and then have at it, combining the systems and leveling up your cards as you play. That power creep is the thing that has me interested in SolForge. That power creep is the thing that keeps me interested as I level up my level 1 to a level 3 and then play that level 3 in the fourth round of combat to slowly clench the win. I just find that power creep, that escalation of gameplay, combined with a well-done, clean combat system, to be an excellent combination that has me incentivized to continue to dive into this game again and again, to pursue different strategies, to pursue different cards to level up, to try different faction combinations, to try different deck combinations. This game, SolForge Fusion, gives me a lot of fun because of the leveling up and the way I want to see it implemented every single time I play the game. For me, this is a 4 out of 5. I really enjoy this one a whole lot more than I thought I would. Again, this genre is typically not a genre that stays in my collection. It's usually a genre that I try and I engage with and I like and then I move on from. SolForge, on the other hand, at least for right now, is sticking around. Like I said, I'm getting those playmats because these are absolute garbage. As far as other game recommendations, first off, KeyForge. While I haven't actually played KeyForge, KeyForge has enough overlap with SolForge as far as the systems at play, including a designer, that if you like one, it's certainly worth exploring the other and vice versa. And then similarly, Radlands. Radlands is another game that for me has transcended the genre. Transcended is the wrong term. I just don't love this genre. Again, I like the genre, I enjoy the genre, it doesn't stay in my collection. But Radlands would be another one that has managed to persevere past that. Primarily in that case because it is a completely closed system of like 150 cards, no other expansions, no other cards being added, and Radlands has, again, because of that system, because of the way they handle it, has been another one that has managed to break through as being a thoroughly enjoyable two-player head-to-head system. Highly recommend trying out both of those games. In any case, and until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I hope you have a good one.